Idaho Matters podcast is brought to you by St. Luke's On Demand Virtual Care, which allows patients to see a provider from their home using a computer or smartphone with on demand care for common ailments such as a cough, sore throat, or a sinus issue. More information at stlukesonline.org.
Looking for more from Boise State Public Radio? Follow us on Instagram. You'll find behind-the-scenes peeks at our station, quick updates on the stories shaping Idaho, and reels that bring our reporting to life. It's a new way to connect with the music, news, and voices you hear every day on the air. Search for Boise State Public Radio on Instagram and join our community.
From the studios of Boise State Public Radio News, I'm Samantha Wright, filling in for Gemma Gaudette. This is Idaho Matters. Uranus has a new moon. This planet, which orbits our sun beyond Saturn, is a bit of a mystery since not much is known about it, despite getting a flyby by a Voyager 2 back in 1986. We do know it has rings and 28 moons, well, now 29. Matthew Hedman was part of a team led by the Southwest Research Institute that used NASA's James Webb Space Telescope to spot the new moon. He's a physics professor at the University of Idaho. He's joining us now. Hi, Matt. How are you?
Hi there. I'm doing just fine. Thanks for having me on.
No problem. Let's start with the moon itself. This moon is very small, I understand. How big is it?
It is very small. It is only between about 4 or 5 miles across. So smaller than most towns.
Wow, I could walk that far.
Yeah.
How close is it to the planet?
Well, it's one of the closer moons to the planet. It still orbits outside the rings, but it's, let's say, about 20,000 miles from the center of the planet, or about 10,000 miles from its surface. So it's a ways out there.
Gotcha. And how did you find it? Talk about the James Webb Telescope and how it fits into all this.
Okay. The James Webb Space Telescope is a really great telescope that's out in space, which means that it can observe at wavelengths that our atmosphere would basically block any light from getting to telescopes here on Earth. Turns out that that's really good if we're looking at planets like Uranus and looking for moons around them, because the planet is actually fairly dark there, so we can look for faint objects and orbit around it. And last year, we asked for some time to look for some small moons that might be orbiting around this planet by just basically taking really deep pictures. And they were kind enough to give us the time to take those pictures. And as we looked through them, we could see something moving around the planet. And it wasn't any of the new moons, so it was a previously unknown little moon. And it's a pretty faint and hard to see thing, so only this telescope could clearly see it.
And so you were kind of looking for moons? Were you actually looking for possibly new moons or new undiscovered moons, I guess you would say? And you just sort of found this one?
Yep, that was part of the goal of these images. We were basically trying to get a good look at the rings and small moons around Uranus, and one of the things we were hoping to find was additional small moons, because there's a whole family of small moons, and they range in size from from about twice as big as this one to 100 times the size. So it was reasonable to think there could be a couple, and we wanted to see if there was. So, and apparently the people in charge of the telescope thought that was a reasonable call to make, and we did in fact find one.
Well, and a lot of these smaller moons are kind of crowded together, right? And did I read they might be more likely maybe to crash into each other?
Yep. This collection of about, well, now 14 small moons are orbiting very close to one another, and they actually are close enough that their gravitational pull pulls on each one of them. And if you basically put the system of moons into a computer and let it run, over time their orbits get pushed around by each other, and it leads to them colliding with each other on timescales from 4 to 100 million years, depending on what assumptions you make. So it looks like this collection of moons doesn't last for very long. It can on geologic timescales. So yeah, these moons could be crashing into each other, and this new little moon could help us understand that.
Wow. So we don't know if this has actually been there and it's just sort of been hiding because it's dark and hard to see, or maybe something crashed and there actually is a new moon since the last time somebody looked.
Uh, It probably has been around for a while.
Eh,
It turns out this was so small nobody could have seen it even when the Voyager spacecraft flew by. And the timescales for these collisions are more like a million years than like 10.
Gotcha.
So it's probably been around for a while, but it probably may not have been around for, the entire time Uranus has been around.
And we don't know much about this planet, right? I was looking online and I mean, we know some, but not as much as a lot of the other planets.
Right. We have yet to have a spacecraft orbit Uranus. We had a spacecraft fly by, that was Voyager 2, but Uranus and Neptune, these two planets on the outer solar system, are still major mysteries. They're not like Earth or Mars. They don't have solid surfaces, but they're also not like Jupiter or Saturn, which are giant balls of mostly hydrogen and helium. They're a very mysterious type of planet, and there are lots of puzzles associated with the planet, its rings, its moons. It's really the frontier of the solar system out there.
We're speaking with Matt Hedman. He's a physics professor at the University of Idaho about the discovery of a new moon or a newly discovered moon in our solar system. So, what's next? How do we find out more about this little moon?
So we are currently digging into the data. We were able to see the moon. Now we're trying to figure out exactly how fast it's going around the planet by comparing images taken at different times. That'll help tell us how it's interacting with the other moons. We're also trying to see if we can see it in different colors to see if we can understand whether this object is made of the same stuff as the other moons. So those are kind of the two things we're pursuing right now. And of course, we're still looking to see if there are any other potential moons that might still be in those images that nobody has noticed yet.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that also alludes to this isn't just as simple as you pointed the James Webb out there and poof, there it was. This took a while to figure out, right? This takes a while. It's a long process to figure out there's something there.
It took a little bit of effort to see this really faint object. Yeah, and part of the way it worked is we had 10 pictures and we were able to check, yep, it's in all 10 and it's moving around at the right rate. So yeah, it takes a little bit of processing to get that, to find that signal.
So why is it important to study these moons and how maybe they interact with the rings of the planet?
So the big reason is we don't understand how this system of moons and rings really works. The moons being in the state where they might collide with each other on timescales as short as a million years, no other satellite system does that.
Hmm.
The rings are weirdly narrow. There's a lot going on with this system that we just don't understand, implying there's something we're missing. Little moons like this one are very sensitive probes because they're fairly small, they're easy to push around. So our hope is by finding these moons and figuring out how they move, we'll get some clues into what forces or what processes are actually causing the ring moon system to be the way it is, which is still really not understood.
Wow, a lot we don't know. So right now they're calling it 2025 U1, which is not a very fun name. But
Nope.
I read Uranus has a really weird naming convention. Where do all the names of its moons come from?
All of the final names of the moons are come from basically works of English literature, mostly Shakespeare, some from Alexander Pope. And that's because Uranus was discovered by a English astronomer. And so when it gets an official name, which we're working on, it will be a character from English literature.
Wow, that's that'll be fun. Um,
Yep.
so NASA's planning a new mission to the planet. Are you excited about that?
It's still in the early phases, but it would be extremely interesting to get a spacecraft to go to Uranus and actually get close-up looks at all of these things. That's probably the best way to actually understand not just the rings and the moons, but the planet, its weird magnetic field, and all of this stuff. It would be awesome if such a mission happened in my lifetime. It takes a while to get to Uranus. Let's say it that way.
Right? You got to get there before you can get the pictures back.
Exactly.
So,
Yep.
how is this what you do on a regular basis? Look for moons? I mean, how did you get into this?
I'm I mean, actually, yeah. Part of my job is processing data from various spacecraft to try and figure out what's going on. Finding moons is, of course, a really exciting end member of all of that. But there's lots in these pictures that tell us about the basic physical processes that operate in outer space. So trying to understand those processes by processing images and other data is part of what I'm paid to do.
Well, and I'm glad you're doing it because what fun is that to be able to put on your resume? I helped find a new moon, right?
Up. Oh, definitely.
Well, this has been fun, Matt. Thanks for coming on and tell us about the moon.
Okay. No, thanks for having me.
We've been speaking with Matt Hedman. He's a physics professor at the University of Idaho about the discovery of a new moon in our solar system. We'll put some pictures and a video showing the solar system's newest moon on our website, boisestatepublicradio.org.
This is the Idaho Matters podcast. I'm Gemma Gaudette.
Sources and methods, the crown jewels of the intelligence community. Shorthand for how do we know what's real? Who told us? If you have those answers, you're on the inside, and NPR wants to bring you there. From the Pentagon to the State Department to spy agencies, listen to understand what's really happening and what it means for you. Sources and Methods, the new national security podcast from NPR.